My name is Grace Fisher, and I was raised in a traditional Amish community in Pennsylvania. I am 26 years old now, and I have been married for a little over 3 years. Whenever people hear that I grew up Amish, one of the first questions they ask is about my wedding. But sooner or later, almost everyone becomes curious about one specific part of that day. They ask what happens after the ceremony. Some people expect a mysterious tradition. Others imagine strict rules or unusual customs that nobody outside the Amish community knows about. I usually smile because the truth is much simpler than people expect. In fact, our wedding night was probably one of the least glamorous nights of our lives. There were no luxury hotels, no candlelit dinner, no expensive honeymoon suite. Instead, after one of the longest days we had ever experienced, my husband Jacob and I went upstairs to the small bedroom where I had slept since childhood. We were completely exhausted, and before we knew it, we were asleep under my parents' roof. That was our wedding night. Some people laugh when they hear that story. Others think it sounds disappointing. But to us, it felt completely natural because we were never taught that one evening should be more important than the marriage itself. To understand why, you first have to understand what an Amish wedding day is really like. Our wedding took place on a cool Tuesday in late autumn, shortly after the harvest season had ended. That time of year is common for Amish weddings because the heavy farm work is finally finished, allowing families to gather without worrying about the fields. The day began early. Before sunrise, our house was already full of activity. Family members moved from room to room making final preparations. The kitchen smelled like fresh bread, roasted meat, and homemade pies. Outside, horses and buggies began arriving one after another. By the time the ceremony started, nearly 300 guests had gathered at my parents' home. People often imagine beautiful churches decorated with flowers. Our ceremony was very different. Everything happened inside the house. Wooden benches had been borrowed from nearby church districts and arranged throughout several rooms so everyone could sit together. The service lasted more than 3 hours. There were long sermons about faith, commitment, humility, and responsibility. We sang traditional hymns together. Finally, standing before our bishop, our families, and our entire church community, Jacob and I exchanged our marriage vows. There were no loud celebrations, no dramatic music, no dancing. Everything remained peaceful and respectful because the focus was not entertainment. The focus was making a lifelong promise before God. People are often surprised when they learn that my wedding dress was not white. Instead, I wore a deep blue dress that I had sewn myself over several weeks. Every stitch reminded me that marriage required patience and careful work. Jacob also wore simple clothing. His black suit looked very similar to the one he would wear to church on any Sunday. The difference was that every piece was newly made especially for our wedding day. Nothing was designed to attract attention. Instead, everything reflected humility and simplicity. Once the ceremony ended, another enormous task began, feeding hundreds of people. Most modern weddings hire caterers. We never considered doing that. Our mothers, grandmothers, aunts, sisters, neighbors, and friends had spent days preparing every meal by hand. The menu was filled with homemade favorites: roasted chicken, mashed potatoes covered with rich gravy, fresh bread straight from the oven, creamed celery, coleslaw, fruit salad, several kinds of homemade pie, and one of my personal favorites, cornstarch pudding. Preparing food for 300 guests was not something anyone could finish in a single morning. The women in our community had worked together for days. Everyone had a responsibility. Some baked, others peeled vegetables. Some washed dishes, others arranged tables. The work was shared because the wedding belonged to the whole community, not only to the bride and groom. The same spirit of teamwork appeared everywhere. Long before the wedding, our entire house had been cleaned from top to bottom. Every floor was scrubbed, every window washed until it shined. The yard was carefully trimmed. Even the barn had been prepared so visiting horses would have plenty of space during the day. Looking back now, I realized the greatest gift was never the food or the decorations. It was seeing so many people willingly give their time without expecting anything in return. Nobody asked how much they would be paid. Nobody complained about the hard work. Helping another family was simply part of life. That spirit of service is one of the strongest memories I still carry today. After the main meal, people remained together for hours. Friends caught up with one another. Children played outside. Older relatives shared stories. Traditional hymns filled different rooms throughout the afternoon. Although Jacob and I were the bride and groom, we actually spent surprisingly little time together. He stayed with the men for much of the celebration. I spent most of my time with the women. That may seem strange to outsiders, but it felt perfectly normal to us. Our wedding was never meant to place us at the center of attention. It was about two families becoming one and allowing the entire church to celebrate alongside us. Later that evening, another lighter meal was served. By then, everyone looked tired but happy. Guests slowly began preparing their horses and buggies for the journey home. As the crowd became smaller, Jacob and I helped wherever we could. We carried dishes, moved benches, checked on older relatives before they left. Even on our wedding day, nobody expected us to sit back while everyone else worked. Helping was simply part of the celebration. Finally, when the last visitors had gone home, we quietly walked upstairs. The room waiting for us was the same bedroom where I had grown up. Nothing about it had changed. The familiar wooden furniture, the handmade quilt on the bed, the small window overlooking the fields. Everything reminded me of home. Some people imagine wedding nights filled with excitement and luxury. Ours was filled with silence.
Not because something was missing, because we were simply exhausted.
Within minutes, both of us were asleep. There were no grand surprises, no expensive gifts waiting in the room, no carefully planned honeymoon schedule. Just two people who had promised to spend their lives together and were finally getting the chance to rest after one unforgettable day. At the time, I never questioned how simple it all seemed. Years later, after meeting many people outside the Amish community, I realized how different our experience really was. Many couples spend months planning one perfect evening. We spent our energy preparing for a lifetime instead. And looking back now, I honestly believe that simple beginning taught us lessons that stayed with us long after the wedding decorations had disappeared. The next morning, the celebration was far from over. Many people think that once the wedding ceremony ends, the bride and groom disappear to enjoy a private honeymoon. That was never part of our tradition. Instead, Jacob and I woke up before sunrise. The house was already full of activity again. Family members and neighbors had returned, not for another celebration, but to help clean everything that had been used during the wedding. Rows of wooden benches needed to be carried outside and loaded onto wagons so they could be returned to nearby church districts. The kitchen was filled with dirty dishes waiting to be washed. Tables had to be taken apart. Floors needed sweeping. Blankets and chairs had to be put back where they belonged. Without anyone assigning jobs, everyone simply started working. Some people washed dishes, others packed leftover food. The younger boys carried heavy benches, while the women organized the kitchen. Jacob and I joined them without hesitation. After all, this had been our wedding, and we believed it was only right to help restore the house to normal. By the end of the day, my parents' home looked almost exactly as it had before the celebration. That experience taught me something important. An Amish wedding is never about one perfect day. It is about people working together before, during, and even after the ceremony. Nobody expects to be served. Everyone expects to contribute. After the cleanup was finished, life slowly began returning to its usual routine. Although Jacob and I were now husband and wife, we did not immediately move into our own home. For the next several months, we stayed with my parents while preparing for the next chapter of our lives. Many people are surprised by that. They imagine newly married couples wanting complete privacy from the beginning. For us, living with family during those first months was practical. It gave us time to save money instead of rushing into unnecessary expenses. During that period, another tradition began. We visited every family that had attended our wedding. Each invitation felt special. Instead of bringing gifts to the wedding itself, many families preferred giving them during these visits. Every evening, we would travel by buggy to another home. We would share a simple meal, spend time talking, and enjoy each family's company. Before we left, they would usually present us with a gift. Almost every gift had a purpose. There were handmade blankets, kitchen tools, wooden furniture, shelves built by skilled craftsmen, cooking pots, lamps, storage cabinets. Nothing was chosen simply because it looked beautiful. Everything was meant to become part of our daily lives. Some of my favorite gifts were made by Jacob's father and brothers. They spent weeks building furniture with their own hands before our wedding. Every table, every chair, every wooden cabinet reminded us that people had invested their time instead of simply spending money. That kind of generosity creates a different kind of appreciation. While we were visiting relatives and friends, life continued as usual. Jacob returned to construction work. I also worked whenever I could. Before our first child was born, I cleaned homes for several English families nearby. The work was difficult, but I enjoyed it. Every dollar we earned had a purpose. We were not saving for vacations. We were saving to build our own future. One lesson I learned growing up was that every paycheck should be divided carefully. My parents believed saving money was just as important as earning it. They taught us that freedom comes from living below your means, not above them. Jacob believed exactly the same thing. From the beginning of our marriage, we agreed to save at least 20% of everything we earned. Some months we managed even more. It was not always easy. There were moments when buying something new seemed tempting. But before making any purchase, we always asked ourselves one simple question. Do we truly need this? If the answer was no, we waited. That habit probably saved us thousands of dollars over the years. People sometimes assume Amish families are poor because we live simply. The truth is often very different. Many families are financially stable because they avoid unnecessary debt. Growing up, I heard my father repeat the same advice many times. Debt steals tomorrow's peace. Those words stayed with me. Because of that mindset, we never borrowed money for our wedding. We never wanted to begin married life owing thousands of dollars for a single day of celebration. Everything was carefully planned years in advance. My parents quietly saved small amounts over time. Relatives donated food. Neighbors gave their labor. Friends offered equipment. The entire community made the celebration possible together. Looking back now, I honestly cannot imagine starting our marriage any other way. Instead of beginning with financial pressure, we started with gratitude. Eventually, we began planning our own house. That dream did not happen overnight. We knew exactly how we wanted to approach it. Rather than hiring expensive builders, Jacob's father, brothers, uncles, and several friends worked together. Whenever someone finished their own daily work, they came to help. Week after week, our future home slowly took shape. Walls were raised, the roof was completed, windows were installed. Each stage reminded us once again how valuable a close community can be. We purchased building materials only when we had enough money to pay for them. If we needed to wait another month before buying something, we waited. There was no rush. There was no pressure to impress anyone. Slow progress was better than living with debt we could not comfortably manage. Many people from outside our community believe success means owning the newest car, the newest technology, or the biggest house. Our definition has always been different. To us, success means living peacefully, caring for family, and sleeping well at night without worrying about unpaid bills. That simple philosophy shaped every decision Jacob and I made during those first years together. And even today, I believe those early lessons became one of the strongest foundations of our marriage. As the months passed, Jacob and I slowly settled into married life. Nothing about it felt rushed. We learned together, made mistakes together, and celebrated small victories that many people might overlook. Our first home was finally finished after nearly a year of steady work. Every room carried a memory. The kitchen cabinets had been built by Jacob's uncle. The dining table came from his father. The rocking chair beside the fireplace had been made by my grandfather years before we were married. Every piece had a story behind it. When we unlocked the front door for the first time, we were not stepping into an expensive house. We were stepping into a home that had been built with patience, hard work, and the kindness of people who cared about us. That feeling was worth more than anything money could buy. Many people ask whether living such a simple life ever feels limiting. Honestly, I never think about what we do not have. Instead, I think about everything we have been given. We wake up every morning without worrying about large debts. We are surrounded by people who know our names. When someone becomes sick, neighbors arrive without being asked. If a barn needs repairing after a storm, dozens of families appear ready to help. Those things are difficult to place a price on. Our financial habits remained exactly the same after moving into our own house. We continued saving a portion of every paycheck. Whenever unexpected expenses appeared, we tried solving the problem ourselves before spending money. Last year, our buggy needed major repairs. Some people would have replaced it immediately. Instead, Jacob spent several evenings fixing it with help from his brothers. The repairs cost only a small amount compared to buying another buggy. The same approach applies to almost everything we own. If something can be repaired, we repair it. If clothing can be patched, we sew it instead of throwing it away. If furniture becomes scratched, we refinish it instead of replacing it. Those habits were passed down through generations. They are not about being unwilling to spend money. They are about respecting what you already have. When our first daughter was born, our priorities became even clearer. Children grow quickly. Buying expensive clothes every few months never made sense to us. Instead, I bought fabric whenever it went on sale and spent evenings sewing dresses myself. Watching my daughter wear clothes I had made with my own hands brought me far more joy than buying something from a store ever could. The same philosophy shaped the way we handled food. Most of our vegetables came from our garden. During harvest season, we spent days preserving fruits and vegetables for the winter months. Shelves in our basement slowly filled with jars prepared during the summer. When snow covered the fields outside, those shelves reminded us that planning ahead always pays off. Nothing was wasted. If leftovers remained after dinner, they became lunch the following day. If bread became stale, it was used in another recipe. Small habits repeated every day eventually created big results. Sometimes English families I worked for asked how we managed to save money while raising children. They expected me to mention a secret investment or a complicated financial plan. My answer always surprised them. There was no secret. We simply spent less than we earned. We avoided buying things just because everyone else owned them. That decision alone changed almost everything. Of course, our life was not perfect. We still faced challenges. Unexpected medical expenses appeared from time to time. Farm equipment occasionally broke. Construction work slowed during certain seasons. But because we had built the habit of saving, those difficult moments never completely overwhelmed us. Instead of living paycheck to paycheck, we had prepared for hard times before they arrived. Looking back now, I understand why our parents emphasized these lessons so strongly. They were not teaching us how to become wealthy. They were teaching us how to remain peaceful. There is a special kind of freedom that comes from knowing you owe nothing to anyone. You sleep better, you worry less, and you can focus your attention on the people sitting around your table instead of unpaid bills waiting in the mailbox. Every now and then, someone still asks me about my wedding night. They usually expect an exciting story hidden behind Amish traditions. When I explain what really happened, they often seem surprised. Some even apologize because they expected something much more dramatic. I simply laugh. The truth has never disappointed me. Our wedding night lasted only a few quiet hours. Our marriage has lasted every day since then. That is where the real story has always been. One evening cannot build a strong relationship. Expensive decorations cannot guarantee happiness. Luxury vacations cannot create trust. Those things may be enjoyable, but they are temporary. Real marriage grows through ordinary mornings, shared responsibilities, small sacrifices, daily choices. That is where love becomes real. When I was younger, I sometimes looked through magazines left behind in the homes I cleaned. The photographs showed beautiful wedding dresses, tropical honeymoons, and enormous celebrations. For a while, I wondered if I had missed something. Now, years later, I no longer feel that way. I would choose our simple beginning again, without hesitation. Because our marriage was never built around impressing strangers, it was built around serving each other. Our wedding day ended quietly. Our life together began even more quietly. But that quiet beginning gave us something lasting. It gave us a strong foundation built on faith, patience, responsibility, and community. Those values continue guiding every decision we make as parents, as husband and wife, and as neighbors. The older I become, the more grateful I am for those lessons. Simple living is not about giving things up. It is about knowing what truly deserves your time, your energy, and your heart. When I think back to that quiet evening after our wedding, I realize something important. The night itself was never meant to be remembered as the greatest moment of our lives. It was simply the first page of a much longer story. Everything that truly mattered came afterward. The years that followed taught Jacob and me lessons no wedding ceremony ever could. We learned that marriage is built through ordinary days rather than extraordinary celebrations. It grows while paying bills together, while raising children, while solving unexpected problems, while choosing patience instead of pride. Those everyday moments become the strongest parts of a relationship. Today we are raising 2 wonderful children, and another little one will soon join our family. Our home is usually filled with laughter, muddy boots near the front door, and toys scattered across the living room floor. Life is busy. Sometimes it is exhausting, but it is also deeply rewarding. The values we learned during our first years of marriage continue guiding every decision we make. We still follow the habit of saving part of every paycheck. Even with children, we make sure at least 20% goes into savings whenever possible. Some months are easier than others, but we remain committed to the habit because it gives us security for the future. We also continue avoiding unnecessary debt. If something can wait, we wait. If something can be repaired, we repair it. If something can be made by hand, we often choose that instead of buying a replacement. Last winter, our dining room chairs became loose after years of daily use. Instead of shopping for a new dining set, Jacob spent a weekend tightening the joints, sanding the wood, and applying a fresh finish. When he finished, they looked almost new again. Moments like that remind our children that taking care of what you already own is just as important as buying something new. Our daughter recently needed several new dresses after growing taller over the summer. Instead of visiting expensive stores, I purchased fabric during a seasonal sale and spent a few evenings sewing each dress myself. She proudly tells everyone that her mother made them. Hearing those words makes every hour of sewing worthwhile. People sometimes mistake simplicity for sacrifice. From the outside, they assume we constantly feel deprived. The truth is exactly the opposite. Choosing a simple life removes many unnecessary worries. We spend less time chasing possessions and more time enjoying one another. Family dinners happen almost every evening. Neighbors stop by without needing an invitation. Children play outside instead of spending hours staring at screens. Those moments cannot be purchased. They must be protected through intentional choices. One question I hear often is whether I ever wish my wedding had been larger or more luxurious. My answer has never changed. No. When I was younger, I occasionally wondered what it would feel like to wear an expensive white gown or travel somewhere beautiful for a honeymoon. Those thoughts disappeared as our marriage grew stronger. Now I understand that a successful marriage has very little to do with the size of the celebration that begins it. A wedding lasts one day. Marriage continues every day afterward. If all your energy is spent creating one perfect event, it becomes easy to forget the thousands of ordinary days that follow. Our community has always understood that truth. That is why so much attention is placed on preparing young couples for real life instead of one unforgettable evening. Parents teach practical skills. Church members offer guidance. Relatives provide support. Everyone works together because they know the real journey starts after the guests return home. Looking around my house today, I still see reminders of our beginning. The wooden table where we eat every meal. The blanket my grandmother stitched by hand. The cabinet Jacob's father built before our wedding. None of those items are expensive, yet every one of them carries a story. Those stories make our house feel warm in a way that expensive furniture never could. I also think about the lessons my parents quietly taught without giving long speeches. They showed me that generosity is measured by actions rather than money. They showed me that serving others creates stronger relationships than trying to impress them. Most importantly,
They showed me that faith should influence everyday decisions instead of appearing only during special occasions. Those lessons became the foundation of our family. As our children grow older, I hope they learn the same values, not because they are Amish, not because tradition demands it, but because those principles create peaceful lives no matter where someone lives. Work honestly, spend carefully, help your neighbors, keep your promises. Value people more than possessions. Those ideas remain meaningful in every generation. Sometimes people still expect me to reveal a hidden secret about Amish wedding nights. They hope there is some mysterious custom that outsiders have never heard about. I always smile because the truth is far more ordinary. Our wedding night was quiet, simple, peaceful. Two tired people resting after making a lifelong commitment. There was nothing dramatic hidden behind closed doors. The real beauty appeared later. It appeared in early mornings spent working together, in difficult seasons that strengthened our relationship, in children growing up surrounded by love, in small daily choices that slowly built a lasting marriage. If someone asked me today what makes an Amish marriage strong, I would not mention the wedding ceremony. I would talk about consistency, about choosing each other every single day, about building trust one decision at a time. Those things cannot be bought.
They cannot be rushed, and they certainly cannot be replaced by one expensive celebration. After more than 3 years of marriage, I remain grateful for the simple beginning Jacob and I shared. It taught us that happiness is rarely found in grand moments. More often, it grows quietly through ordinary days filled with faith, gratitude, hard work, and love. That may not sound exciting to everyone, but for us, it has been the greatest blessing of all.